Moghalu, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, former presidential candidate in 2019, and presidential aspirant for 2023, and the convener of the Moghalu for Nigeria movement, M4N, that's numerical 4. Oh gosh. This is a press statement that I'm putting out today, and after my statement, I'll take questions. The title of my statement is, "To build a nation, we must confront our history, embrace reconciliation." I am today asking President Muhammadu Buhari to immediately set up a Truth and Reconciliation Commission as a first step to stabilize Nigeria and begin the process of national healing and reconciliation. It is obvious that Nigeria is a country at war with itself and in a troubled search for nationhood. We will distribute copies of the statement afterwards, immediately afterwards. But you can take notes if you want. It is obvious that Nigeria is a country at war with itself and in a troubled search for nationhood. The current crisis of insecurity and nationhood, evident in President Buhari's recent controversial remarks about the security crisis in the southeast region in the context of the Nigerian Civil War of 1967 to 1970, and the strong response to the President's comments from all over Nigeria and all around the world, leading to the Nigerian government's ban on Twitter, is deeply unfortunate. While I believe strongly in the viability of a united Nigeria anchored on equity and justice, as a leader, I do not believe in a surface approach to issues. I do not believe in playing the ostrich. I believe in a root cause approach to solving problems. I condemn, once again, without equivocation, all violence in the southeast region, including the phenomenon of unknown gunmen, attacks against security personnel, the burning of INEC and other government facilities, and the reported extrajudicial killings of innocent civilians in the region by security agencies. It is clear, however, that the federal government of Nigeria has not adopted a root cause approach to the agitations for secession in different parts of the country, in particular the southeast and the southwest, and the security implications of these agitations. The root cause of these separatist agitations is injustice. An unwillingness to recognize this fact leads to the avoidance and convenient distortions of history in order to maintain injustice and the transient advantage that this state of affairs confers on certain vested interests. Without prejudice to the need to maintain security, law and order, the militarization of the civilian space as the exclusive response to essentially political agitations is a failing strategy. It will only build up more grievances. We must confront the historical hurts that have stoked inter-ethnic tensions in Nigeria. The purpose is not for any part of the country to quote-unquote win the argument of its own narrative, but rather to recognize the deep wounds we have all inflicted on each other. To pull back from narratives that drive sectarian hatred, and instead to build a new, more hopeful future for our country with a resolve to learn the lessons of history. A Truth and Reconciliation Commission's primary responsibility should be to reconcile Nigerians across sectarian divides that have been sustained by the more unfortunate aspects of our history. In particular, the military coup of January 1966 and its casualties, the counter coup of July 1966 and its casualties as well, and the pogrom of an estimated 100,000 Nigerians of a specific ethnic group, and the consequent civil war in which an estimated 2 million people lost their lives. If we must build a nation of our dreams, we have to confront our history and utilize it for reconciliation and not for division. This begins with a conscious decision to end a policy of conveniently sweeping history under the carpet and to recognize certain historical facts. In this context, it is important to recognize, through a national holiday, the loss of millions of lives in the Nigerian Civil War, currently marked unofficially by many Nigerians as Biafra Remembrance Day. To continue to fail to do so is to deliberately avoid recognizing the value of the millions of lives lost in the war. The lives of these departed were lost in a bid to keep Nigeria one. Rwanda, for example, recognizes its dead in its civil war and its genocide. Israel, another example, recognizes the Holocaust with a memorial and a museum. And the United Nations recognizes that tragedy with an International Holocaust Remembrance Day. A Truth and Reconciliation Commission, along with other policy actions, will go a long way in cleansing the bitterness that has been planted in the hearts and minds of many Nigerians. As a former United Nations official, a former senior United Nations official with a track record in conflict resolution and rebuilding failed states such as Angola, Cambodia, Croatia, Rwanda, and Somalia, and in international peace and security operations, I am making the recommendations in this press statement as a contribution to stopping immediately the current bleeding of our country. Beyond my personal intervention, the Moghalu for Nigeria M4N political movement calls on the Buhari administration to shift from its evident policy of exclusion in governance, in which the three constitutional arms of government, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, are headed by citizens of one part of the country and one religion, and the parochial control of Nigeria's national security apparatus, and shift to an all-inclusive government involving all zones of the Federation. In my recent declaration of interest to contest in the 2023 presidential election, I pledged to unify Nigeria through inclusive governance with a dream team from all over our country if I am given that opportunity. In conclusion, I make the following specific recommendations. 1. President Muhammadu Buhari should, as a matter of urgency, establish a Truth and Reconciliation Commission comprised of 7 independent members of high reputation and relevant expertise, 1 from each geopolitical zone of our country, and 1 international member assigned either from the United Nations or from the Republic of South Africa, both entities of which have extensive experience in TRC matters, with a 6-month mandate to examine specifically the events of January 1966 to January 1970, invite witnesses, survivors, and critical players still alive to make statements and make findings and recommendations that will promote national reconciliation by turning historical memory into a positive force for mutual forgiveness and nation building. I have been personally involved in many of these kinds of exercises under the auspices of the United Nations. So as I said, I know a thing or two about this. 2, President Buhari should invite all secessionist agitation movements to a national dialogue in order to give them a hearing with a view to addressing credible, verifiable grievances. 3, concrete actions towards the establishment of a constituent assembly to begin the framing of a new constitution with legislative support from the National Assembly should be initiated by the President in collaboration with the National Assembly and representatives of ethnic nationalities, traditional rulers, the clergy, and civil society. 4, President Buhari should appoint a panel of historians with equal representation from the northern and southern parts of Nigeria to review and agree on a curriculum of contemporary national history, including the Nigerian Civil War, to be taught in primary and secondary institutions from the specific perspective of lessons learned, national healing, and reconciliation. 5, establish May 30 as a national holiday to remember the millions that died in the Nigerian Civil War. To build our nation, we must confront our history and embrace reconciliation. Thank you. I think that this government will listen to my recommendation. As active citizens, we have a duty to make our contributions to national stability, to nation building, and to the prosperity of our country. We do not do it just because the government must listen, although it ought to. But even where the government doesn't, the duty still remains on our part as citizens to do what we can to make our country a better place. Just as your duty as reporters and journalists remains to keep reporting the truth. These things will all go into the record. That's very important. Whether the government responds or not, it will be part of history that these recommendations were made, and if it turns out that they did not listen, that will also be part of history. So that's my answer to that question. But we're doing it because of our duty to Nigeria. The second question was on the police. What's the police not doing right? First of all, I have said it, although the recommended ratio of policemen to numbers of the civilian population is I think about 400 to every 100,000. And I think we are sort of close to that, if not there. But we have a very unique situation in Nigeria. I, first of all, believe that we are under-policed, I believe that our police force does not have the level of professionalism that is necessary to effectively maintain law and order in Nigeria. There's too much corruption. There's too much, there's an absence of human rights consciousness in the work of the police. So there is some air of impunity that you find in our law enforcement agencies because they feel that they will be protected and that they are not accountable for extrajudicial killings. We saw the Inspector General of Police tell Nigerian policemen to basically ignore any human rights concerns. And if anybody challenges you, come to me. I know what I'll do. Basically, he's saying, I'll protect you. It doesn't matter what you do. Just do what I want you to do. The second problem the police has is that the federal central control of policing in Nigeria has weakened the security of the country. Because the police are not enough, they're not well trained, so they're not able. Policing is best when it's local, with people who know the area very well, and when there's confidence between the citizens and the security forces. You find that because of the lack of professionalism of the police, because of perceptions and reality about its corruption, about its ineffectiveness, there is some sort of adversarial relationship between the citizens and the state, largely in Nigeria, of which the police is a component. So that confidence building between communities, we call it community policing, is generally lacking. These are some of the issues. We hope that a constitutional restructuring of Nigeria will address the question of state police. We hope that even for now, the police should invest heavily in training and retraining its officials or its cadre. When I was an officer in the United Nations, when my career began in Cambodia, I was a human rights officer. One of the things I did was to train the military, to train judges, to train the police. A country coming out of war, they did not have any concept of human rights. So in building their institutions, in rebuilding that failed state, I personally trained police officers, trained judges, trained the military, and conducted elections as an elections officer. So these are some of the approaches I would recommend for the police. For example, you find that police people, I don't see a lot of specialization in police work in Nigeria. Today, a policeman may be on the street commanding traffic. Tomorrow, he may be in an investigation. Tomorrow, you may find him in some other assignment. But effective policing requires specialization. And this is one of the things I would recommend for the Nigerian police force. Thank you. I think you have the third question. Because there were so many questions. Can you?
Just two.
Just two.
The first one is, are you ruling out the possibility?
Oh, the possibility of, yes. Okay. Now, look, we don't know. There is, of course, political motive in a lot of the insecurity in the country today. Whether it's in the north or in the south, it's some political motive or the other that is driving people. In some cases, it is also sheer criminality. Not much of a political motive, but just criminality. So that's a fact that there are political motives. What those political motives are is not always clear. If we are to give take the example of the Southeast, you will find that there is a mixture of things going on there. There are political battles between political personalities, and you cannot rule out the possibility that political gangs loyal to, different personalities are involved in some of these violence. We have had reports of extrajudicial killings of civilians. Security agencies pick up young men suspected of belonging to separatist movements and just shoot them. We know that there are some separatist movements that have taken responsibility for some of the violence. So the point is that the police so there's a mixture of things. This is what I'm trying to say to you. There is even another theory, but I must say it's just a speculation. But there is another speculation, that there is a political motive of some of the violence simply to discredit the region and prevent certain political outcomes in 2023. That's also there. So So there are several things, and a lot of it is politics, no question about it. What was the other part of your comment?
From which?
The prism, yes. Now, that's the whole point of this recommendation I have made about a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And that's one of the reasons why the specific recommendation I made, one of those specific recommendations, is that Buhari should convene a panel of historians from different parts of the country to come together and agree on the history to be taught in our schools, especially concerning the period of 1966 January to January 1970, because that seems to be the most contentious aspect of our history. June 12 is a very difficult aspect of our history, but it's straightforward. I don't think anybody debates what happened in June 12, but on June 12. But regarding the Civil War, the crisis, you'll find some people, they will emphasize the Civil War, horrible as it was, 2 million lives dead, no joke. Anywhere in the world, 2 million lives is a lot of lives. You find the pogrom in 1966. Then you find the first coup itself, which some people will tell you is a major trigger of a lot of things that happened afterwards, and the killings in those schools. That is why my recommendation, recognizing that all parts of this country are hurting, whether the southeast, where millions of people died during the war, whether the northern part of the country, which lost its political leaders in the first coup, it is legitimate to look at all these things and for us to confront each other and say, we are all sorry to one another for what happened. That's why my approach is an approach of peace and reconciliation. It's not an approach of people scoring political points. And that's the whole point of this recommendation. We must move away from that narrative. And the way for us to move away from this narrative is for the leadership of our country to begin to change, to confront, stop dodging history. Stop running away from history. History is a merciless shadow. It will always follow you. And the test of whether you're a leader or not is whether you're able to confront it and overcome it. You use it as a building block. In America, you have their history. The wars, the civil rights movement, all these things are painful. You know, you had the Japanese and the Koreans and the Chinese. You had the Germans and the Jews. All these countries confront their history and show respect for lives lost. That's what builds a nation. The biggest problem Nigeria has today is that it has not been able to build a nationhood in which we have a shared ambition, even despite our diversity. We blame our diversity, but that's a lazy strategy. It's a lazy response. We are not the only diverse country in the world. In America, you have the blacks, the whites, the Asians. You have a lot of racial strife, but the idea of America unites all of them. And they're all proud to be citizens of that country, regardless of what the issues are. This is the approach that I will bring to Nigeria if I were to become president of this country. One of the reasons I'm seeking that office is that having built peace and reconciliation, having rebuilt failed nations around the world, I want to play a role in doing so in my own country. That's the whole point, because I have seen that that level of leadership is lacking. So that's my answer. Another 3 questions? Let me start with that last question. I think we have to understand that we should have a commitment to democracy. And that we should not, in America and in many countries around the world, even during wars, elections are held. I do not encourage the kind of thinking that allows us to seek refuge in excuses, to truncate democracy, because there is there's a lot of insecurity. INEC offices have been burnt in 1 or 2 places. Even the President Buhari himself has said in his recent remarks, that was the more uncontroversial part of his remarks, that elections must hold in 2023. And I believe that that is a good position. And I think that is the position we should all take, regardless. You know, it's for the government to secure its facilities and make sure that it deals with anybody who breaks laws by burning public offices. So that's my response to that question. I believe the elections will hold. I believe they should hold, regardless of the current phase of turbulence that we are going through. One of the reasons, some people asked me, why have you chosen this time of crisis to announce your presidential ambition? This is one of the reasons why I chose this time to announce. Because it is in periods of darkness, it is in periods of hopelessness that true leadership rises to offer hope. As a leader, I cannot afford to allow my fellow citizens to be drowning in hopelessness and depression. And many people said, this is the first good news we have received in a long time. An act of leadership has been successfully accomplished just by that mere reaction. So, because by doing so, I focused the minds of Nigerians on the fact that we are still a democracy and that we are in the security situation in which we are because of a failure of leadership. And so we must advert our mind to the fundamental issue of how and the standards by which we select our leaders. And 2023, another opportunity will come. You don't want to repeat these mistakes that we have been making. So that's all part of why I made my announcement and offered myself to Nigerians with a different vision. That vision is based on 4 things, a 4-point agenda to be achieved in 4 years, 4 by 4. And that is security, war against poverty, accelerated education and healthcare reform, and good governance. It's called SWAG. It's the SWAG agenda. And I'm the man with swag. The other question?
Oh, about what makes you think coming from...
Oh, yes. Okay. Now, you see, I want you to understand something. I have run for president before. I ran in 2019. I did not run for president as an ethnic candidate. I will not run in 2023 as an ethnic candidate. My appeal, my vision is for the whole of Nigeria. It's for every part of Nigeria. The north, the south, the east, the west. So that's just my answer to the question. If you're running for president, you're looking for support all over the country. It's nice if people from your part support you, and I'm sure some will, and some did in the last election. But it's never a uniform thing, in any election. Check all the leaders who were elected president in Nigeria. Many of them, or some of them, did not even win their own polling unit. Yes. So it's not a big deal. And it's not only OBJ, by the way. We have, in more recent times, seen people. President Buhari lost in Aso Rock. That's his polling unit. Atiku lost in his polling unit, if I recall. So, people make a big deal about all these things. And, we should have a more mature understanding of what democracy is and how we can build our country by not emphasizing too much the narrative of ethnicity. We all have our cultural origins, and that's okay. But I want to tell you that at the end of the day, there are only 2 tribes in Nigeria. Forget every narrative you hear. There are 2 tribes in Nigeria today: the politicians and the rest of us. So, and I include myself in the rest of us because I'm not a career politician. Now, when the politicians are looting our commonwealth, you will find Christians, you will find Muslims, you will find Yorubas, Igbos, Hausas, Ijaw. There is no difference when they are in this, context. When you see insecurity and poverty afflicting us as Nigerians, does joblessness identify your ethnic group? Does insecurity identify your ethnic group? The country is insecure from the north to the south. So we should stop allowing ourselves to put too much emphasis on these narratives, because they're convenient narratives driven by incompetent and visionless politicians, to divide the country for their own selfish purposes. So that's my answer to that question. Any question else I haven't missed?
And then, do you think that all the coalition of...
Yes, we're rounding up soon. So now, you make a recommendation, as I have made now. I put it out there. Many people will consider it. Some may agree, some may not. I suspect most people will agree that this is a good idea. The question is whether or not there's a political will on the part of the leadership to take this idea and execute it. None of us is in doubt that this would help. Yeah. But if they don't have the political will, I cannot point a gun and shoot the president. All we can hope for is that we survive till 2023 and elect the kind of government that already has this idea. You're not going to be reminding me, if I were president of Nigeria, to do this, because I've already come out with it. So that's my answer. The Twitter ban is a very negative development on several grounds. First, it is unconstitutional. Go and read Article 2 or Chapter 2, I think Article 22 of the Constitution. Section 22. Yes, Article 2, Section 22 of the Constitution. Chapter 2. Go and read it. And you will see what it says, that the media are to have, it's a guaranteed constitutional right, that the media should continue to do its work and to hold the government accountable. And Twitter is a mass media. In today's technological world, it's not just Vanguard and Nation. Today, the media includes the social media. So, first of all, it's unconstitutional. Because of that, there is no legal basis to prevent Nigerians from using Twitter. And so I was very amused when I read some statement credited to the Attorney General that people will be prosecuted. I'm like, immediately, of course, I went into a VPN and tweeted, hoping very much that somebody will show up at my doorstep and arrest me.
So you're expecting Malania?
Yes, to arrest me. So then the second part of it is that the economy of the country, many small-scale, business types, people who are making shoes and advertising, making handbags, the different kinds of hustles we have from people or by people in a difficult economic environment. They're all affected because they advertise on Twitter. So billions have already been lost in a few days, according to news reports. So it's not a good development. If the government has any issues with Twitter, I want to remind you, Twitter banned Donald Trump, President of the United States, a far more powerful country than Nigeria. So they did not ban Twitter. They did not take the fact that the Twitter deleted or banned a president as an individual. Twitter did not close the White House Twitter feed. They closed Donald Trump's Twitter feed because that's where the issue was. So in our own case, I think it was the official channel or whatever that was being used to propagate this statement that many people find offensive and distasteful. If you have issues with Twitter, there are ways to handle it. Many countries have developed, frameworks to kind of modulate social media and prevent it from becoming some platform for excessive toxicity and viciousness, which some of us, of course, also worry about. So that's my response to the Twitter ban. It's not helpful at all, and I call on the government to reverse it. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.